Joining me now from Capitol Hill, Congressman Jeff Denham, a Republican from California. Congressman, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
So you represent a border district, and I know you recently toured your state's border. You saw those guards down there. Can you just tell me what you are seeing yourself with your own two eyes and what you're hearing from your constituents back home about this?
Well, I've been fighting for immigration reform for quite some time, and I've always said that border security comes first. So I went down to the border with a bipartisan group. We wanted to see exactly what was happening on our southern border, where in San Diego, we've got some of the most stringent policies. We've got 2 sets of fences. We have cameras. We've got motion detectors. We are detecting tunnels. Border Patrol is doing some very good things. But even on that area, we're still seeing families, mothers with children coming across, asking for asylum. We witnessed it firsthand.
Okay, so you've seen with your own eyes the issues at play here that are now really front and center. And so in terms of the politics and where you're standing and joining me, you know, it's been more than a year. You know this, since the Senate passed that comprehensive immigration overhaul. It has been held up in the House by your Republican colleagues. And I know that you are in this unique position, Congressman, because you are among this handful of House Republicans who want to act on immigration reform this year. Let me just contrast that with what we heard from House Speaker John Boehner today on the president's $4 billion proposal. Here he was.
If you look at the president's request, it's all more about continuing to deal with the problem. We've got to do something about sealing the border and ending this problem so that we can begin to move on with the bigger question of immigration reform.
I imagine you agree with Speaker Boehner when it comes to, you know, securing the border, but in terms of you being that handful of Republicans, Congressman Denham, how will you convince your colleagues on this issue, and this issue happening this year?
Well, the biggest part of this is actually starting the you know, many of my colleagues looked at this as being a California problem. This is a national problem that the entire nation is really feeling today.
But the nation, sir, forgive me for jumping in, I mean, this debate has been going on for years.
Decades, absolutely. Yeah. This is over a 30-year problem that even when Democrats had control of both houses and the presidency, they decided it wasn't a big enough issue. And now this president has said since 2011, the border is secure. Well, to convince not only Republican colleagues, but to convince the American public, we have to give them the assurances that we're going to seal the border once and for all and have a legal and fair system that follows the rule of law.
So how exactly do you assure them of that? This is such a nuanced and complicated issue. What is your #1 fix?
Well, we had a bipartisan bill come out almost a year ago now. The McCall bill had bipartisan support, in fact, unanimous support coming out of Homeland Security. But our border is different among all of the different states. In Texas, for example, we're seeing this big surge.
Right.
We've got millions of acres of no fence, no cameras. In fact, Border Patrol can't even go into that Department of Interior or Department of Forestry area. So it's a big, complicated issue. We've got a bipartisan bill. We need to get that to the floor and actually see the support.
You mentioned, you know, that obviously the poorest parts of the border, and we've been talking so much that this issue with these children, as many as 80,000 undocumented kids that's the number we have, will be crossing the border illegally this year. And as it comes to these little boys and girls, Congressman, do you think that they should be able to stay?
You know, I think that we're going to have to address the court system first. This backlog in the courts is not only creating an unjust system with huge backlogs and long waits, but it's also creating this whole other issue with Border Patrol being able to do their job today. So I think the courts come first, and then we have to assess and deport those to their native countries as we see fit.
Are there exceptions, though, with those kids?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're a great nation. There are always going to be exceptions, but we need to deal with those through the court system.
Like what? Just putting you on the spot. Like what, specifically?
Well, I mean, certainly this is a humanitarian crisis, and we need the president to be actually reaching out to these heads of states to find out exactly what their issues are so that we can address them ourselves within our country.
You represent, I mean, you are in this unique position representing this, you know, border district here in California. So you know, when we're talking about children coming across the border, and I hear you loud and clear with the court system, and a lot of people agree with you, but there are exceptions to that in terms of allowing some of these children to stay over, be it abuse, being parts of gangs, what have you, back home, let's say in their Central American country. I just want to hear from you specifically what kinds of exceptions you would be willing to accept.
You know, I've been concerned about the 11.5 million undocumented that we have today. And part of the concern is right now the Border Patrol is telling us that they've got a catch and release policy. So many of these kids that are coming across the border are then being sent to different areas in my state, across the country, where they're going to be staying with parents or relatives, whether or not they're documented or not. So we have to address it internally and within our own country first. We have to address this problem at the border, and then we actually have to assess this tens of thousands of kids and really assess what different challenges are they facing. I mean, part of, you know, what you heard in the Senate hearing was that there is very little documentation. There is very few identification or birth certificates to even identify where they go back to so that you can even tell if their story is true. Right. So we've got a lot of work to do ahead of us.
Right. You do, Congressman, and I really, truly appreciate the time you spent with me there. We'll let you get back to work. Congressman Denham, I appreciate it. And we will have much more on what's happening as far as immigration. The president in Texas today. We'll have a debate later this hour. Crossfire host